Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our presentation. So we're going to talk about the experience that we've had with Engineering 101 dual enrollment at Cal State Long Beach, our Hung Family College of Engineering. Okay. No, I'm fine. One of the barriers for getting equitable access to engineering degree programs is that traditional high school curricula do not teach engineering, and therefore, if you don't have parents who are in the field or have access to people who are in the field who would raise your awareness about this degree path and career options in high school, you don't know about it. So there's an awareness gap. Students whose parents are in the field are more likely to be aware and enter the field themselves. Also, students often discover engineering too late. Engineering curricula is just very inflexible. We've got long prerequisite chains that are often 4 years long. So if you discover it as a sophomore or a junior, it's already kind of too late to at least graduate in 4 years. Well, I shouldn't say it's too late, but it's much harder. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to design some kind of dual enrollment program for students without prior STEM exposure to see if we can train like more diversity and representation into our field. And the last bullet, we wanted to focus on access, belonging, and identity. We know that a lot of students drop out of engineering, not because they're doing poorly. It's because they don't feel like they belong in the field and they can't envision themselves in it. We know the literature says the more you identify with being an engineer, the more likely you are to stay in the field and succeed in it. Next slide, please. So this will describe some of our efforts to go from outreach to pathways to a pathway. We know that outreach is short-term and limited. We do participate in counselor conferences, the college and career fairs. We have engineering ambassadors who visit our high school and community colleges, but these are all one-time interactions. So they come and then they go home and they may or may not remember. And we have already identified this gap in early exposure and its impact in entering the STEM pipeline. So we wanted to try using dual enrollment to address some of this gap. Dual enrollment will give students a sustained experience with subject matter, and it will give them a more realistic chance at evaluating whether they are interested in it and would like to pursue this. We know that our community colleges handle the bulk of, the lion's share of dual enrollment, and that is very valuable for engineering and computer science classes like calculus, physics, and all the general ed. But we're going to describe some of our experience with Engineering 101. This is a class that is not offered at community college and is required for all of our majors in the College of Engineering at Cal State Long Beach. And of course, we know that under dual enrollment, students earn CSU credit and they build confidence. Next slide, please. So of course, it's important to design within the system. This was built through the K through 16 collaborative grant. And this grant, I would say, has been instrumental in connecting us with LBUSD and LBCC. I mean, without their input, we wouldn't have been able to design a system that would have worked across our segments. We discovered that in LBUSD, our students choose their high school pathway in 8th grade. So it's linked learning pathways. It's a best practice in guided pathways advising. But nevertheless, there are 2 pathways in LBUSD that lend themselves to easily major in engineering or computer science at the university level. And of course, it If students don't know about engineering in 8th grade and don't choose one of those two pathways, it makes it considerably harder. So another piece of feedback we got is that we should hold our class on Saturday. I mean, we looked at after school during the week, but Saturday ended up being the best day. Also, our semesters are 15 and a half weeks long. Requiring students to come to our campus 15 and a half times would have presented some barriers. So we combined our sessions into longer sessions. So we meet 5 times over 5 weeks, and then we cover 3 class periods per meeting. And then we did broad recruitment beyond STEM. So we purposely targeted the LBUSD high schools without the 2 STEM pathways, just to get some more exposure to high school students at an earlier date. And let's see, I just wanted to mention a couple more things. We did focus on our computer engineering technology major in the first year because that program does not have requisite chains that are as long or as theoretical of a background. That would be harder for students who didn't start in one of those linked learning pathways to catch up in. And also we saw the placement data for that major. So the graduates of this program were getting jobs that were comparable to the jobs that our computer science graduates were getting at comparable pay. So we thought this was a good major to start with. Okay, next slide. And I think I am turning it over to Abba at this point.
Yes, thank you very much. So a couple of things that I learned being the instructor for this course, both in spring 2025 and spring 2026. This is the exact same slide that we use for undergraduate when they take ENGR 101. In the spring 2025, we actually had a few undergraduate students that came and joined our class as well. So we had high school and undergraduate students. Those high school students learning along with CSULB students helped them a lot in order to make the 3-hour long class interesting and do different things during these 3 hours. We had speakers and we had a lot of hands-on projects using Arduinos along with the lectures. This helped them do problem solving and think as designer, and turning things on and doing projects with their hand really helped them attract their interest. Next slide, please. While we did not water down the course, I do acknowledge that you need more interactive and engagement when you're working with a group of high school students. Their attention span is a little bit shorter, so I try to change the pace of the class from lectures to hands-on project to preparing presentations for their final project, and be very clear with them in terms of rubrics and timeline for everything that was involved in their class. And again, our main focus was to build their confidence and tell them even if you don't have like straight A's in math and science, you can still be an engineer and have this experience for yourself. Next slide, please. What I started walking into this course, I thought that the students might need a lot of help from me, but they proved me that they can actually do a lot. They really encouraged me and they really impressed me when it came to doing the hands-on project using the Arduinos. In some cases, the high school kids were helping the undergraduate when it came to doing a project. In some groups, they work alongside each other and made groups for their final project and did presentations that were very, very impressive. I was happy that they got highly engaged in their project and that the way that they think, though different from undergraduate students, is very impressive and they can come up with very good results as well. Next slide, please. And I think taking it back to Dr. Rhee so she can explain about the 2 sections that we did over spring 2025 and spring 2026.
Thank you so much, Ava. So these are some of the early results we got from the first year that we taught the dual enrollment class from spring 2025. So we started out with 39 enrolled, and 29 students ended up completing the class. So we consider this to be a success. 29 is actually a good cohort size for a college class for this particular class. Um, so it's a high retention rate for this type of class. Also, the diversity of the cohort reflected the diversity in Long Beach, which is one of the things we were very happy to see. It's one data point showing that the access goal that we had was reached. And then the exit survey, we did see a lot of increased interest in engineering and CSULB. In fact, I think almost all of the survey participants, except for one or two, said that this experience made them more interested in potentially pursuing computer engineering technology or an engineering major, and at Cal State Long Beach. Next slide, please. So some of the key factors that we believe made it work. So the strong collaboration between the K through 12 school district and our university, I think, was instrumental for reasons that I explained before. We were able to anticipate and remove some of the structural barriers for our target audience to be able to access this course. They also maintained the rigor of the class. They learned everything that our normal undergrads would be learning and more, as Dr. Hedayatipour described. And that early belonging is also key too. This was an experience for them to be on a college campus, to be in a college classroom with a university instructor and imagine themselves in that environment. Next slide, please. So spring 2026 was our second year with this dual enrollment class. So as Ava mentioned, handling almost 40 high school students is a challenge. So we thought it would be better to go with smaller sections. So we had 2 sections this year with about 20 students each. And then we brought on some new majors to promote with high school students this year. So in addition to computer engineering technology, we're also doing data science and chemical engineering. One benefit of this grant is that we are putting some dedicated time into developing stronger articulation pathways from community college into our university programs in these areas. So we are just combing through LBCC's course curriculum and articulating every possible class that we can. For example, for computer engineering technology, I think we articulated 13 additional classes. And we have a way to graduate from computer engineering technology with just 160, or no, let's see, it was 67 units at LBCC, and then you can finish up with 61 units at Cal State Long Beach once you transfer. And then expand to more districts. So I believe the first year, most of our high school students came from one high school, Wilson High School, if I remember. And the second year, we did make an effort to target the other high schools without the STEM pathways. And then we did get more diverse participation from more schools. Next slide, please. Why this matters? So the pipeline into engineering has to start before college, and we need to increase that access to students who are traditionally not getting it. So that's point number one. This early exposure changes everything. We know it's not just access, it's also the belonging and the engineering identity. So basically, when students can picture themselves here, everything can change for them. Yeah, and I think that brings us to the end. Should we take questions now or at the end?
we'll have time for audience questions at the end. And please feel free to populate the chat with those questions as well. We'll make sure to get to them at the end along with our Pomona colleagues. But thank you so much, Dr. Rhee and Dr. Hedayatipour, for your insights. We also wanted to note before transitioning that we have a feature story on the Long Beach program that is now available on our LA K16 website. We'll share the link to that story in the chat later on as well, outlining the Engineering 101 course. Thank you so much. We'll now transition to the Pomona team to share their insights on their dual enrollment program.
Thank you so much. So again, I'm Monica Principe, the Administrative Director for Pomona Unified School District.
And I'm José Aguilar-Hernández, professor at Cal Poly Pomona, and also oversaw the curriculum and teaching with Pomona Unified for this dual enrollment program.
So as we start out, we found that what would happen is we found that we had a need for dual enrollment, and we also had a need with the new laws coming up for an ethnic studies course. So we reached out to our partner, Cal Poly Pomona, and through our previous relationships, and I can't stress that enough, is to build relationships with your universities and with your community colleges that are near you. And through our partnership, we were able to access this grant for Pomona Unified School District. We really are trying to work on our college and career index. As you can see, as 2019, we were 38.2%. This past year, it got reported wrong, and we didn't get credit for all of it. So next year, it's going to skyrocket. There was a glitch in our computer system. But our goal is to really improve our college and career readiness for our students, to give them more access, to allow them to experience dual enrollment. And whereas Long Beach is doing it on the Long Beach campus, we found that it works better for our students is to do it on our campuses with our teachers doing our instructional day, and we tend to get more kids involved that way. We do have it where they can go to the campuses, but the vast majority, and for this program and for these intents and purposes, is we had the courses right on our campuses. And like Dr. Aguilar-Hernández said, he was the mentor professor, which was invaluable. And then we put all of our teachers together through a screening process, and we were able to use our teachers to teach the courses on our campuses with our students using the same syllabus that Dr. Aguilar-Hernández wrote. So they're all getting the same instruction, the same syllabus, the same textbooks. We're using the same pacing. And then they had professional learning provided throughout the semester and the year. And then in addition to that, field trips. So whereas ours were done, we do have the option, and we do every semester take field trips to Cal Poly, so they do get the experience of being on the campus, seeing what's there, and having that experience.
Yeah, thank you, Monica. I think I really want to emphasize the importance of this collaboration, because when I was pulled into this work, that collaboration already existed, right, between folks like Xiomara, who is on the call, and our current provost, Dr. Terry Gomez, who have already developed relationships with other programs. And again, there was some seed money, there was some availability. We did a pilot back in 2021, which then led us to develop this 3-year grant, which is wrapping up this semester. So on the Cal Poly Pomona end, we identified an important equity need, which was that we studied the cohorts from 2018 to 2024. Well, before I'm presenting the data now, but back then we were looking at 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. And this data that I'm about to report includes all the way up to 2024. And when we looked at incoming freshmen college unit count, meaning students coming in as freshmen and the number of units they were bringing with them, we found something interesting. If you could click the next ones. What we found is that out of all those cohorts, and again, this is incoming freshmen, of those that enrolled in spring semester of the second year, so those that continued enrolling in college, we're bringing in an average of 11.8 college units into Cal Poly Pomona. And what we also found was that, that sort of the middle of the sophomore year was one of the sort of biggest leaks in our pipeline where we lost anywhere between 15 to 20% of our students in terms of our continuing students. And when we ran the data, we found that of those that did not continue, right, of those that did not continue into spring of their second year, they came in with 6.4 college units on average. So if you click next, that identified a 5.4 unit gap for us. So we thought of the importance of, sort of identifying identifying this collaboration as one that was grounded in data and making sure that, both institutions were able to identify what is it that you're trying to, fix or sort of increase. And we were able to sort of collaborate on this. Next slide. So I'll just share here that, Monica shared a lot of this already, and in many ways it relates to a lot of the work of our colleagues at Long Beach. As a professor of educational leadership, I work with doctoral students, so we operate we operate with the practice that any sort of feature that we develop, any sort of intervention, that we need to have, literature support that, right? So on the left, we have what the literature review of this project did for me, and then, the features that were developed. So all the features were developed intentionally and aligned with studies that we reviewed. So first, the dual enrollment credits, we found that the dual enrollment credits increased third-year persistence. And this was from an important, recent dissertation, Dr. Jeanette Baez. We're begging her to please publish this so that we all have access to it, because we need that in a peer-reviewed article, as you all might agree. But this, aligned to what we found in the data, is that if you come in with more college units, you're more likely to, continue enrolling into spring semester of your second year. So on the right, that's why we developed this Intro to Ethnic Studies. That was the course that was taught within the master's schedule by PUSD teachers. So just to sort of illustrate that, the students were meeting Area G requirement at Pomona Unified and currently now Area 6 in the CSU and also in the CCCs, right? California Community Colleges, previously Area F. Then we also found that ethnic studies, university school partnerships, there's like a lot of studies, well, a few studies that happen in Northern California, like the Sacramento area, Berkeley. So, we intentionally built this as a collaboration between the two versus us sort of showing up and saying, hey, here it is, let us take over. That it really became a partnership and a collaboration between the two. Third, we found in the literature that ethnic studies courses increase academic and holistic outcomes. So there's all sorts of studies that, found that for us. So we wanted to make sure that we had a high retention and completion rate of the students to ensure that, with the literature says that ethnic studies courses increase this, we were interested in making sure that we met that, that goal of the literature. So the curriculum and unit design was, design written by myself, but it was definitely PUSD teacher adapted. So we treated the teachers as the experts of their students, of their campuses, of their curriculum, of their leaderships, of their school district. And one of the things that the teachers said often in PDs was that this was like, one of the few times that they've had access to higher ed curriculum and that they've been able to adapt it, for example, into period or units. Whereas for us, 3 hours a week, for them, it's about 5 days a week, 45 to 55 minutes, depending on the school. So we had to work on breaking it down into units that adapted to the bell schedule in Pomona Unified. And we let them take the lead on that. And then lastly, ethnic studies, pedagogy, and teacher training. The literature says that ethnic studies can increase academic and holistic outcomes, but the way to do that really means that you have to ensure that the teachers are trained in the field, that they have some background, some training in this work. So we developed the Teaching Ethnic Studies summer course, which the teachers were required to take. We engaged in classroom visits where I was able to go and learn from them. I really want to stress here that this wasn't like a clipboard classroom visit. This was like I was going to learn, right? I sat down and I learned. The students would show off for their teachers, right, as much as possible those days. But it also became points of conversation with the individual teachers about any strategies or any challenges that they were having. So this wasn't anything that went into the record, it was more of a conversation. Go to the next slide. And I'll just hand it over to Monica after this. This was the general outline of this Introduction to Ethnic Studies Area 6 course. And what I think made this course interesting was that on one level, we had to meet the learning outcomes for Area 6. So this, sort of these units were key. But what we also understood was that we wanted to make sure that we incorporated some STEM information within an Intro to Ethnic Studies course. And we also wanted to make sure that this curriculum was, culturally relevant to Pomona Unified School District teachers. So I'll give you an example. When we got to the Rethinking History unit, one of our teachers, Mr. Molina at Pomona High School, had developed this lesson where he would teach students how to count and how to figure out like their birthdays and things like that in Mayan. So in an indigenous culture. So that was an entry point into math that made it personal to the students. But then shortly after that, we would show them images of indigenous structures like pyramids in Mexico and in Peru, waterways, aqueducts. So we would show them all these images of Choco Canyon, for example, in New Mexico. And we would show them these images as a way for them to then understand architecture as a manifestation of indigenous knowledge. And that is that, these architectural buildings were designed, engineered, thought about by indigenous peoples before Western, conquest of the Americas. And that, it sort of reshaped and, did a paradigm shift to help the students understand that we are learning about peoples that have knowledge, that have histories that predates European knowledge and contact and conquest. And another way that we applied then and made this connected to them, in the cultural expressions part, it turned into a conversation about the Pomona Fairplex and also about the Santa Anita racetrack. And those of you that are familiar with those, they're important cultural sites in our area, in our region. The LA Fair takes place at the Pomona Fairplex, so it's a key place for our communities. But they're also sites of Japanese American internment. And this became an opportunity for the students to understand that, right next door to, Pomona, there are two local places where Japanese internment occurred. So they read a piece by one of the Cal Poly Pomona faculty that wrote about those places. And in one case, they were able to take a field trip. One of the terms, they were able to take a field trip over to like a little monument that was erected there at the Fairplex to have a conversation about the reading. And then they were able to sort of, go to the park and hang out and talk about it in tables. And then they end by doing contemporary topics and social movements where they feature, hey, like there's, social movements that are still happening today. And here's examples of them. And more importantly, here are resources in Pomona that, fight for these issues, whether it be environmental justice, whether it be supporting, battered women that leave their homes, whatever those, projects are, they were able to link it directly to their community. And I'll pass it back to Monica.
Yeah, so to wrap it up, one of the things I want to make next slide, please. One of the things I do want to stress is our outcomes. Out of the 393 students enrolled, 391 received dual enrollment credits. So that's a 99.4%. The teachers worked really hard with the students and to make sure the rigor was there and the relevance was there. And like Dr. Aguilar said, tying it back to the history of Pomona. Another thing I wanted to mention is this just wasn't an adult decision. The idea and the driving force for an ethnic studies class, that was something that our student advisory committee said they wanted and they needed. So not only was it students, community, district leadership, and board members that wanted it when we came to Cal Poly and asking for the partnership, it was everybody. The other bonus is dual enrollment courses, as you know, are treated in our district, they're treated like an honors or an AP course. So the students do get an extra point in their GPA for taking these courses, which is an incentive for them to take it as well. We do have a student from Ganesha High School graduating this year. She's going to graduate from high school and have her AA at the same time. And she is one of our students that's taken advantage of our dual enrollment courses, obviously, over the years and taken courses both at our site as well as the community college. So currently we have, or last year we had 44 currently enrolled in the spring. And we're hoping that, like Dr. Aguilar said, this is the last year of the grant, but we're hoping that we find funding or additional funding to keep this program going, because we do think it's extremely valuable for our students and for our teachers and for our community.
Thank you, Monica, and thank you, Dr. Aguilar-Hernández. Thank you to the Pomona team for your insights. Please look out for our feature on their dual enrollment course coming out soon on the LAK16 website as well. I'd like to move us into our conversation now and just discuss some of your outcomes a little bit more. To start off, I'd like to address and acknowledge maybe an elephant in the room. Dual enrollment is traditionally a collaboration with community colleges in California, but as you shared today, today's models were collaborations with CSUs. And so how can we better align community college and CSU dual enrollment efforts so that students experience a more seamless pathway? And why don't I pass it back to Dr. Rhee to get us started?
Sure. Well, I just want to start off by saying that LBCC was at the table when we designed our dual enrollment program. So I think it's clear that they own the calculus and the GE. Well, we offer ethnic studies dual enrollment as well. And the sciences. So yeah, we don't want to step on their territory when it comes to classes that they offer that articulate to our classes already. I think it's easier for community colleges to offer dual enrollment than the universities. As I explained, we wanted to do Engineering 101 because it's something that they didn't offer and is not articulated to our classes. And it would be something that would give high school students a head start. I mean, it is a prerequisite for all of our degree programs, and they would be earning college credit towards those degree programs.
Thank you, Dr. Rhee. And if I can pass it over to you, Monica.
I agree with Dr. Rhee, and I think it's important. I oversee the dual enrollment. My department does with both the community college and with our Cal States or Cal Poly Pomona. So I think it's really important for us to look at, like how Dr. Rhee said, is to look at the courses that we're offering through our community college and make sure we're complementing each other and not conflicting with each other, right? So this dual enrollment course in ethnic studies, we weren't offering it through the community college, so we're able to offer it in Cal Poly. And if we could be really strategic in the ways that we're choosing our courses and mapping out our future courses to make sure that they complement each other and we're not overlapping.
Absolutely. Another question for you all. Dual enrollment is often praised for acceleration, but it doesn't always reach the students for this from these college pathways. How did you design these programs intentionally for inclusion rather than just acceleration? I'll pass it over to you, Dr. Aguilar-Hernández.
Thank you so much for that question. I think we were really intentional about that, to be frank. There's, for example, high schools like Ganesha High School at Pomona Unified that have a long history of and multiple options of dual enrollment, which were before and after school, right? So 0 or 7th period. Our approach, which was a little hard with Ganesha because of the master schedule, that was the biggest challenge, was us showing up and saying, hey, find a slot. Find a slot and find a teacher and a prep in the middle of the master calendar. But we were able to do it like 95% of the time, thanks to the schedulers, right? Our master schedulers at the different sites. And the reason behind that was because we knew from I guess intuition, but also experience and from literature that Some students self-select out of dual enrollment when it's 0 and 7th period or on the weekends because of jobs and or because of caretaking responsibilities, whether it be they need to be home because their sibling is getting out of elementary or whatever the case may be, or they need to drive someone to the doctor, those sorts of things. So we understood that it was important to build it that way. And that was helpful because every time I would go to do the visit in the classroom, I would do an unofficial sort of like, how many of you would not be able to take it if it wasn't during the bell schedule? And usually about a third to a half of the class would raise their hand. So we were definitely reaching an audience that wouldn't have had access to it if it was 0 or 7th period.
Thank you. And I'd like to pass it over to Dr. Hedayatipour. You've also touched on this a little bit, but if you could share a little bit about how you thought about inclusion for students in Long Beach.
Sure, yeah. So I think I see students the first time that they are in class and they are intimidated. Like they feel like this might not be the correct step for us. When I ask them, well, what major you want to do? Have you thought about it? Not many of them say engineering. So I start by making sure that everyone know that this class requires no prerequisite. At any level you are welcome to the class. I try to have different level of explanation for the student so that they feel the belonging in the class. And I make sure that I do a lot of ice breaking in the class because eventually they need to do some team presentations on a project. The like pick your own project mates usually do not work because people are there from different groups. I tend to do a lot of ice breaking assignments in class so they can kind of get to know each other and find a group mate for themselves who they can work with.
Absolutely. Thank you for those insights. And now thinking about the LA Region K-16 Collaborative, how can we play a bigger role in connecting districts or community colleges and the CSU campuses to sustain and scale this work?
If I could just share a quick thought, I know that my colleagues have great expertise in this area, but I think of it as like what the CCCs developed years ago, the pathways that we're responding to in the CSUs. That I think that's the link, right? Is that our high school students can go to the community college and can come to us, whether it be through dual enrollment or to get their general education requirements and then transfer to us. We just need to make that pipeline a little smoother. And for us at CPP, we didn't, our partner Mount SAC, we didn't, when Area 6 was developed, they didn't have a faculty quite yet. There was like one person in that role, and they were needing to hire all sorts of people. So we checked in with them, but they said, check in with us like in 3-4 years, which we're going to do now, to have a conversation about like, how can we offer this, the experience, if that's what it is, but how do we make sure that we maintain, and for us is to bring them in more intentionally now that they have a faculty, I think of 3 versus before there was a faculty of 1.
Monica, Dr. Rhee?
The question again was, what can
the collaborative do to help sustain and scale?
Well, one thought that just came to mind, maybe you can involve the chancellor's offices of our 2 systems. Because, we're all kind of doing this work within our own region, which is a perfectly fine way to start. But, at some point, I think we need to converge with all the other Southern California schools. So, the chancellor of the community colleges and the chancellor of the CSU system maybe could play a role in strengthening the system that the 2 systems that we are. I don't know, just a thought.
Want to concur with that. I think it's a great idea. I think one of the concerns that we have, or one of the things that we faced is depending on the district and depending on who your partner are and depending on the relationships, it might look a little bit different for everyone, right? But our goal as educators is to provide access and equity for all students, right? So if you're with a district that has a little different partnership or a better partnership or more courses or less courses or more willing to work, versus a district that makes it a little more difficult to work and get teachers and get that. It would be nice to see just equity for all students in the region and equity for all students between all the different colleges. We have a great relationship. But when I talked to some of my colleagues, they said, oh, that would never happen with us, or we're struggling with this, or we're struggling with that. Luckily, I've been in this job for 20 years or something, something like that. So we do have a really good relationship with a lot of the people at the places. But I agree with Dr. Rhee. It would be nice to see us all on the same page and us all working towards the same goal. There was a question in the chat. I don't know if you're going to get to that, but it was, do students earn high school credits too, A through G? And in our district, yes, they do earn high school credits. And in fact, for our high school graduation, they get double the amount of credits when it's a dual enrollment class. So if it's a regular class that's worth 5 credits, since it's a semester class, which is synonymous with a year class to us, they would actually get 10 credits and they would get the extra point in their GPA for all 10 of those credits.
Wow.
One more question for me, and I'll fully turn it over to the audience then. If another partner in our collaborative wanted to replicate your models, are there any funding or staffing realities or priorities that they should know and understand upfront?
I could talk to funding. We have that. I mean, we are, as a high school, as a unified school district, we do have ethnic study funding that came from the state. So we do have money that we can use, that we've used for our professional learning. We use it for our summer conferences. We can use for our field trips. So we do have funding in regards to materials and supplies and professional learning. So we do have that.
Yeah, I think we also offer ethnic studies through dual enrollment. And they are able to get it funded and sustained somehow. We just need to try to replicate that one, I believe. As far as staff, I mean, we can't do this without our administrative offices. So I see Colleen's on our call, and we get lots of support from our provost office and our various units.
Yeah, same on our end. Xiomara Melendez is on the call, and this would not have happened without her, but also with the extensive team of folks at the Cal Poly Pomona side that are in constant communication with the collaborative, with Andrew and many others on the call to ensure that we're responding, getting those reports in, and making sure that everything gets done on a yearly basis. But I would also say that for our model, one of the things that I think is important is like intentionality. And I know that that isn't like a resource or a budget line item. Because of the literature review, what we understood was that, we have to come in with an open heart, open mind, and really be ready to uplift students and their communities. So that I think requires, yeah, actually it does require resources, because I think it requires resources where, teachers could talk to each other and have opportunities to check in. Hey, this lesson didn't go well. How did you do it? So those sort of learning communities were super key for our students to succeed. So the teachers to succeed, and the teachers to feel like they were experts and they were in control and that sort of thing. So I would just add that part.
Carrie has a question. Does the CSULB course also count for A through G high school credit? To be honest, I'm not sure. They receive a transcript from us, so they're definitely getting college credit. But I don't know how it's been implemented over on the high school side. Do we have anybody from LBUSD on the call? I don't know.
I mean, I can just put on that because there's not an equivalent course for Engineering 101. They're not getting A to G credit, but I know that for our ethnic studies program at Cal State Long Beach, they do get credit on the high school side, similar to what Monica was saying. So depends on the course.
All right, thank you so much, Colleen. Yeah, so our course is probably extra credit.
Or it's like concurrent enrollment, they have to self-report.
Mm.
Yeah. I also wanted to say that, and thank you, IMR, for the quick reminder that when entering students into this class, we were very intentional. Normally, you'd have to have a 3.0 GPA. We went with a 2.5 GPA because we wanted more students to have access. Our whole idea is by the time our students graduate, we want every single student to have had access to at least one dual enrollment or college level course, whether it be in a CTE course or in an academic course, whatever course it is. We want them to have exposure. And we want them, just like Dr. Rhee, we want them to know that they could do it and feel like they could do it and have that confidence. So we did open it up to a lot more students and allow a lot more students in the courses.
Thank you for that. I'd like to offer a few minutes to the audience if they have any more outstanding questions for our team today. Please feel free to come off mute and share your question if you have any for our team. Okay. Thank you so much to our guest speakers from Long Beach and Pomona for joining us today and for sharing your insights about your dual enrollment programs. I think the models will be really helpful to all that joined us today from the LA Region K-16 Collaborative. As a reminder, our session materials will be available and shared in a follow-up email. It'll be also available on our website, losangelesK16.org. Additionally, as mentioned, we'll have features for both Long Beach and Cal Poly Pomona's dual enrollment courses available on the website soon. If you're interested in continuing the conversation, please feel free to reach out to us, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday.